Hiya! It's Carol here from Kicking Habits, a weekly show sharing stories, skills and techniques to help you take back control of the habit or addiction in your life. I'm going to be bringing you some fantastic guests to talk about their stories on how they conquered their habits, along with some professionals in the field who will bring their knowledge and expertise to the show. Maybe you found yourself here because you're sick and tired of the rinse and repeat cycle of your habit or addiction. Then tune in and take away some nuggets to get you started on your journey to freedom. Enjoy the show. Please be aware that I share my own personal experience and the research that I have done around alcohol and other habits in our lives. If you feel you have a physical dependency on alcohol, i.e. when you don't drink, you get tremors, sweaty, headaches, maybe you've fitted in the past, then I strongly advise, before taking any advice from myself or anybody that I have interviewed on my podcast, that you seek medical advice before cutting back or taking a break from the habit that you have. I just wanted to make that clear. My direction on this podcast is towards people like myself that use alcohol, in my case, or any other habit to fill an emotional need. So I just wanted to make that quite clear. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome to Kicking Habits, and I am delighted to have the Aunee Bhogaita with me today from Leicester. It's lovely of you to spend some time with me to tell about your story. Now, I am a This Naked Mind coach, and I've reduced my alcohol and stopped drinking through science and mindset. And Aunee has used a turning point, and it's just lovely to get other paths into becoming alcohol free. I've soon got a lady from Canada that's coming from AA as well. So I'd love, if you're listening out there and you've done a smart recovery program, I would love to hear from you. And if you're, it'd be great to share your story with me too. But I know Aunee went through Turning Point and went to residential rehab at the Nelson's Trust. And I'd just love to open it up really to you, Aunee, and let me know, your story and what led you into drinking in the first place.
Hi, Carol. Thank you for having me. It's great
You're
to be
welcome.
on. So basically, everything for me stemmed in childhood. I
Mm-hmm.
was sexually molested by my dad's brother. My dad, I didn't disclose till I was 13. By the time I disclosed, my dad's brother was married to my mum's sister. So essentially, two sisters married to brothers. I come from an Asian background. So where Asian background is concerned, there's a lot of societal expectations. There's a need to preserve a picture perfect image. It's very ego and pride driven. Um, and so for me, it wasn't the fact that no one believed me. In fact, everyone believed me. That
Mm-hmm.
was the ironic thing about the whole situation. Everyone believed that I'd been sexually molested, and everyone believed that he did it. However, it was very much a case of, okay, you said it, but now you need to shut up and move on with your life, because he's married to my mum's sister. They had a kid, and it became all about her. The focus became all about her, and what's she gonna do, or poor her, this, that, the other. And I'm not saying I wanted to be the center of a drama, but I wanted to be seen and heard, and
Yeah,
it was
cool.
almost, that wasn't the case. And the family carried on as normal. What I mean by that is, and what I find with a lot of Asian families, and I think it's just inbuilt into the cultural normalities, is the fact that they treated him like I hadn't done anything. They almost, in Asian societies, enabled the perpetrator by never holding them accountable for what they did, no matter what it is that they've done, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's sexual abuse, So to the point where even my mum and dad used to talk to him, and it was really difficult for me to comprehend that because I
Yeah.
couldn't understand how they could. I couldn't understand why, and I felt quite betrayed by that. But then I got to the point where I decided, um, I'm quite an overthinker, and I thought about everything, and I thought to myself, well, if it's not him and everyone's still treating him the same, maybe it's me. And I went
Yeah.
through a phase of anorexia, I went through a phase of self harm, I went through numerous suicide attempts, and when I went to college, I started counselling. And this sort of situation just carried on, I guess. The resentments in me escalated, the feeling of betrayal escalated. My family still trying to silence me and carry on things as normal, that kind of went on for years. And then I met somebody, and in hindsight, looking back now, he was completely the wrong person for me. But I guess my need to escape the family then, I'd sort of distance myself from my family and distance myself from the whole Asian culture. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I wanted no
Yeah.
part of it. And so I met this guy, and he wasn't Indian, but that's neither here nor there. It's just that he wasn't the right person for me. But because he showed me compassion and empathy towards my situation, because after a few months of dating, I kind of disclosed to him what had happened, and he was like, that's wrong. Like, the first time I'd kind of heard that. So I kind
Yeah.
of clung on to him. Um, and I went through a relationship with him, and I kind of very much the signs were there from the beginning. He had a bad temper, but I kind of blindsided myself to those things. But as the years went on with him as well, things escalated from verbally being abusive to then sort of smashing up doors, putting his hands on me. But the physical side wasn't as didn't have as big an impact on me as the psychological side. Being made to feel like
Mm.
you're worthless, not good enough, and these are things that I'd been told when I was younger as well, because another part of, well, I can't speak for other cultures, but within the Asian community, it's very much about comparing. I was very
Yeah.
much compared to my cousins and stuff. Oh, she's more intelligent than you. So it was already inbuilt in me that I was never good enough or wasn't worthy. And then I had this partner telling me that I wasn't good enough. I was lucky to have him, and all these things. And I just, in the end, became a shell of myself. I mean, I was at university at the time. When I was 19. I fell pregnant when I was 19 as well. So I took a year out of uni. I kind of moved in with him completely at that point. I was quite segregated. Isolated from my family at that time. And then it became, where it was just me and him, it became very much a case of, I was trying to do uni with the little one, because she wasn't even one yet when I went back. She was 9 months
Wow.
old. He was breaking up with me, making up with me every other day. I was going into my second year, went into my third year of uni, often, sitting there doing assignments with her on my lap and stuff like that. And it got to the point where I realised that if I was to complete the degree, I would come out with probably a third class degree. I was missing time off uni, and I kind of thought to myself, I have a choice now whether I complete this or whether I don't. And so I chose not to complete it because I didn't
Hmm.
want a third class degree, to be honest, at that time. And what happens then? Well, now I don't have uni anymore. I
Yeah.
don't have a friend circle as such. I don't have a family around. There's me. There's this man who, is just in and out of my life as and when he wants to be, because he's put me in a position now where I think that I'm so lucky to have him that I will have him back, you know.
Yeah.
And I've got his baby and I've got the four walls. And I had this whole history of trauma as well, on top of
Yeah.
the trauma that's going on in our relationship. I have a lot of time to think, you know,
Yeah.
and so I spent a lot of time thinking, to the point where it just became so unbearable. I went through numerous suicide attempts again, during that time. And then I just wanted to numb myself from myself. Now, I'd never been a drug user,
Hmm.
I'd used alcohol socially, um, at uni, when I was out with my family, or when I'd go out clubbing. And it was all very controlled. I'd never had an issue with alcohol, but I knew that alcohol did numb you. It did take you to a different place. And so I started to use alcohol to sort of give myself a break from myself, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how it started, really, because now looking back, the day I decided to abuse alcohol, I abused alcohol every other time I took it since that point. Do you know what I mean? Because I took it for the wrong reason. I didn't take it because I was happy. I didn't take it to be social. I didn't I didn't have limits. It almost became limitless, you know. My need to escape myself was so strong that when I found alcohol was doing just that, my intake became limitless.
Yeah.
and my use of it increased as the years went on.
And what were you drinking, Aunee, at that time?
So initially, I was drinking like vodka, and then it would be like a quarter of a vodka bottle, then it would be half of a vodka bottle, then it would sort of go from half, like a little bit, like a quarter of the spirit, three quarters mixer, to maybe half the spirit, half the mixer. Towards the end, it was
Mm.
literally like a cup full of vodka and a dash of Coke just to give it the color, so I could like convince myself that I diluted it. I went through all sorts of phases actually with alcohol. I'll be honest with you. It's sort of, yeah, like I said, vodka. Then it went down. I went down the path of wines. The only thing I never really touched was spirit. It was beers and stuff like that until
Mhm.
I really got alcohol dependent. When I became alcohol dependent, which so when I'm talking about when I initially started, I'm talking about when
Mm.
I was 24. When I became alcohol dependent, I was 35 years old at that point,
Wow.
and
So
my
11
alcohol,
years later.
yeah,
Yeah.
so my alcohol usage had gone from
Mm.
like sort of binge drinking from 24, and it'd gone all
Mhm.
the way through all the different sorts of the processes to get into the point where I was now alcohol dependent. And when I was alcohol
Mm.
dependent, I would drink anything,
Mm.
anything. I even started drinking mouthwash that had alcohol in it.
Mhm.
Um, that's the stage it got to. But my worst was when I was at my worst. I was on a liter and a half of raw vodka a day, every day.
Mhm.
Because vodka was cheap. It's the cheapest spirit.
Yeah.
It's strong, and obviously it does the job, as you know. So that was when I was at my worst, and when I got to the point of weaning off alcohol, it was the vodka I had to wean myself off of, which I never managed to do fully anyway. I went to a detox unit, so
Mm. Mm. And what happened to your child? Because you said you were pregnant. I mean,
yeah. So I
how
had
what
three
did it look
children.
like?
I
3
have three
children then?
children
Okay.
now. Now I had three. I had three children. So I had my daughter when I was 21. I went back to uni for my second year when she was just 9 months old.
Mhm.
Um, and then I stayed in this relationship with this partner. I had my second child, which was my son. When I had my son, things weren't too bad. I had a good job. Ironically, I was working with service users in hostels and alcohol and drug services at
Okay.
that time. But yeah, I had a good job, I had a good wage, everything seemed to be all right. Then my job came to when the government change came in. They gave me a choice of either being redundant or I could pick another job in the council. I was working for the city
Mhm.
council, but I was 4 weeks off giving birth at that point, so I kind of just thought
Wow.
I'm not. I'll leave this as it is. And things kind of went downhill again after my son was born. I think I went through a postnatal depression. Things started to go bad between me and him. And I can see back now because everything was fine when the finances were coming in because I was bringing the
Yeah.
finances in, you know. Still, there's so many things you can pinpoint when you look back. And then I had my final child in 2014 and I left
Mhm.
him in 2015 when my son was
Right.
9 months old. So, and as the alcohol escalated, so I had custody, not custody, but I had all the children with me. And then
Yeah.
he would have them, after we split, he would have them for 3, 4 days. But as my alcohol usage got to the point where I couldn't even manage myself, there was like
Mhm.
points where I couldn't control my urine, my bladder. I couldn't control my
Mhm.
bladder. Um, yeah, literally, I couldn't look after myself. So I decided at that point that the most responsible thing to do at that time was to hand my children to their dad. Now I
Mhm.
say responsible. At that time, my children were a chore, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because looking after myself was so hard. In addiction where your mind's constantly on the alcohol, you're withdrawing, you're shaking, you're all these things, and I could just barely manage myself. And then I had these three children, and I was finding it really
Yeah.
difficult. So
Mhm.
I did hand them over to their dad. I don't mean custody, but he had more guardianship of the children at that time.
Mhm.
But looking back now, it was the most responsible thing I ever did in
Mm.
my active addiction because he was able to give them the stability that I couldn't. Um,
Mhm.
and I know it sounds ironic, doesn't it? Because I've got this man who I paint out to, who I say is a narcissist, but on the other hand, I've given the children to him. But it was either that or put them in care, because the
Yeah.
social services
Mhm.
were involved at this point. Um, so yeah, and then yeah, I had the social services involved. There was a court order made. the social services encouraged him to make a court order in regards to my contact with them. And that court order still stands, ironically, even though I'm
Mm.
3 years into my recovery. But I've just
Yeah.
sort of getting to the stage now where I'm going to, get it dismissed.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. There's a
But I
lot
still have
packed
the
in there.
children now.
Pardon?
Yeah, I still have the kids. So I have the kids every weekend now. Um, my relationship with my children is great now. I'll be honest. It got
Yeah.
to the point where my children lacked respect for me. My daughter even said to me that every day we were just thinking we're going to get a phone call that you're dead.
Oh,
Because
wow.
that's the
Yeah.
path I was heading down.
Mm.
They didn't trust me because sorry became meaningless. Every
Yeah.
time I'd sort of go on a binge, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. And then I'd sort of, I hate the word be good, but I'd stay off the alcohol for a certain period of time. And the kids are like, yeah, mom's changing, mom's getting better. And then boom, I'd do the whole thing, I'd binge drink again. It would all go down the pan again. It was kind of like a
Mm.
cycle. It got to the point they just didn't believe a word I said. To be fair, they didn't really want to be around me,
Yeah.
because towards the end, most of the time I was drunk anyway. So I wasn't seeing
Yeah.
much of that, much of the children at that time.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, did
Yeah.
you said, you had your last child in 2014 and your partner left in 2015. I personally felt that my drinking really ramped up when me and my husband separated because there was no one there to give me a nudge and say, Carol, have you had enough? Don't you think you've had enough? And I mean, how did you find your drinking? Did it escalate when you were on your own? Um, when he'd left, I mean, how did it look when you got the three kids too? Full time.
So for me, I left him.
Okay.
That's what happened. He was at
Yeah.
work one day and I left.
Mhm.
My mom had come over. She'd sort of said to me, "This is just not on." She'd seen the bruises and stuff like that. She'd just like, you need to get out."
Yeah.
And yeah, the alcohol did escalate, but it didn't escalate because he wasn't there to give me a nudge. If anything, he was driving me down the road of addiction even more. Because
Right.
now, even though
Mm.
I wasn't there,
Mhm.
when you're in a controlling relationship, you don't need to be with that person for them to have control over you. So yes, he couldn't physically do anything anymore, but that wasn't the majority of the abuse anyway. The majority of the abuse was psychological, and
Yeah.
so he still had that hold over me. I was still under his control, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and so he was still able to mess with my mind. He knew me inside out. I'd been with the man 14 years. I
Yeah.
was with him from 17 to the age of 31. So I've grown up with him. He knew my weaknesses and he was able to use them to his full advantage. And especially since he knew that I wasn't capable of having the kids, looking after the kids, because now he had the kids, so he could use them as well, you know.
Yeah.
And things got really quite nasty, I'll be honest with you. Things got really quite nasty, but because I was so much, I'd be so scared of what he'd do, or, he'd say stuff like, I've got a girlfriend, she's a better mother to the kids. But when you die, I'm not even going to bring the kids to see you. You're a waste of space. You're even all this foul language. And I know now it just seems like I'm in a different place now. Now I just think to myself, you're saying all these things really, and look at you. But back at that time when you're under someone's control and you
Yeah.
actually believe you're worthless and you actually believe that you're nothing, and then you've got this alcohol problem on top of it, and you're just a drunk, you're this, that, the other. Yeah, it did escalate. It escalated, yeah, drastically to the point where, like I said, I became alcohol dependent. There was a point where I was working as well. It's ironic, but I was working in between. I was working in the pathology labs in the hospital, and obviously I wasn't going to work drunk, but I was having a lot of time off work.
Mm.
Obviously due to my drunken binges. I didn't tell them it was due to my drunken binges. It'd be some, I'm ill or this person's ill or whatever excuse I
Mm.
could make because I wasn't going to tell them. But as the time progressed and time went on, I had really good management at the Royal Infirmary, and they started to suss that something wasn't quite right with me, and it got to the point where I sort of disclosed everything to them, including my alcohol problem, and they
Mhm.
were just fantastic. Even in terms of my whole background, they were the ones that said to me, Aunee, what you've been through so much stuff. Like, you've been through things that you've never dealt with, and
Yeah.
you're going through a lot of things right now. But they did fight to keep me there. But in the end, because of my alcohol dependency, I had to leave. So when I started working there, I wasn't alcohol dependent, but by the time I left, I was alcohol dependent. And obviously, I wasn't going to drink on the job at the hospital. So I
Mm,
had to leave.
mm.
I had no choice at that point.
Yeah. So you mentioned, and we chatted about the Nelson's Trust and Turning Point. So at what point in that journey did you approach them, or did a family member approach them, and how did you get in touch? What happened?
So I've been with Turning Point twice. So the first time was when I was working, and I had these binges, which no one really saw because I'd take time off work, I'd binge drink in my room, and then after about a week or so, I'd go back to work and look absolutely fine. I
Mm,
looked fine on the surface of it. I was still able to manage my appearance. I was still able to coherently, communicate and all the rest of it. So when I used to go to the Turning Point at that point in time, when I used to turn up there, these people say to me, my peers or the people that were there in the group, like, you don't look like you need to be here. And to be honest with you, I
mm.
didn't physically look like I
Yeah.
needed to be there. And so I think I very much thought, okay, I did like a 6-week course with them. They put me on a 6-week alcohol course, and then literally they shut my case down and told me to go to Dear Albert, which is the aftercare community rehab here in Leicester, and that was the
Mhm.
end of that really.
Mm.
No one really zoned in or homed into the fact that actually my issues were a lot deeper than what they seemed to be on the
Yeah.
face of it. Sorry.
And
But
what did the 6 week, just sorry to interrupt, but what did the 6 weeks training, what did that entail? I mean, did you stop drinking for the whole 6 weeks, or did they manage your drinking? I mean, how did that look at Turning Point?
So basically, it was like a group of us. It was a group. It was a group thing where like you meet the same people. Well, the group entailed or comprised of the same people every 6 weeks. So it was me and a selected few, and we'd talk about our alcohol usage, the things we'd tried, or methods we'd used to cut down on our drinking, where we'd like to be, and it kind of went on like that for about 6 weeks, really exploring the pros and cons of drinking. Um, in terms of our life, what it stripped us of, where we want to get to, how we think we're going to get there. Um, and it was good. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like for me, I'm not sitting here saying everybody needs rehab. Not everybody
Mhm,
needs to go down the route of rehab
mhm.
to become alcohol free. You don't. But for someone like me, who where my problems were much deeper than trying to cut down my drinking. There was a
Yeah,
reason I was drinking, and it was a very, very deep reason. It was a PTSD trauma reason, something
yeah,
I'd never
yeah,
dealt with. And so
yeah.
I was never going to stop using until I dealt with the primary issue. And the primary issue wasn't the alcohol. The alcohol was a secondary issue. Um, and so that was picked up much later. That was picked up the second time I went to Turning Point. Second time I went to Turning Point, I was alcohol dependent by that point and had a
Mm,
recovery worker. And initially, he said to me that you need to go to detox, which was evident because I wasn't at the point of being able to wean myself off the alcohol. But the more he spoke to me and the more he got to know me and the more I opened up, he realised that actually there was a hell of a lot of trauma in my life and
yeah.
in my background. And he said to me, "I think you need to go to rehab." And when he said that to me, I was just like, "No way." I mean, I'm putting it quite kindly. No way. The words were slightly different. But
Yeah.
I was like, no. And it wasn't that I didn't want to change. It was just the fact that it was scary, right? If you tell somebody who hasn't got an addiction problem that I'm gonna take you out your hometown. I'm gonna put you in a house with 8 or 9 other people, and that's quite a minimum, 8 or 9 other
Mm,
people for about 3 months, and you're gonna have to live there, and you're gonna have to face yourself and face all your demons. I think they'd
mm,
be a bit petrified. Where when you're in active
yeah.
addiction, that's enhanced about 1,000 times over. So initially, I wasn't really looking forward to going to rehab, and I said no. But I think as time went on, and I realised that actually I was just drinking to die. So if I
Yeah.
didn't do something, then I was going to have to drink every single day because I was alcohol dependent, just waiting to die, basically. And I know that alcohol death is not the quickest of deaths either. It's a very
Mm,
slow and painful death as each of your organs shut down, you know. Um, or I could take this chance, which I'm petrified of, but go to the rehab and see what happens. and so that's when I decided. So that's when I said to him, okay, I'll go to rehab.
Wow, that's a big
I'll go
step
there,
because I
yeah.
think fear is a massive blockage, isn't it? That because we're so dependent on it and our unconscious thinks we need it to survive, which we do often when we get to a dependency, you need it. So yeah, wow, what a massive decision. So what happened in rehab? I mean, just talk us through what happened when you went in. You did the full 3 months.
Yeah. So if I could just touch on something and something that I've
Sure.
identified since coming out of rehab. So when I went to the detox unit, and this is what I run the prehab groups now with Turning Point. So it's a course that people have to do. It's mandatory before people go to rehab. But I never did the
Mhm.
prehab course. In fact, when I went into detox, my recovery worker didn't even know. It was during the COVID time, and they just had a space, and they rang me and said, "Do you want to come in?" And I was like, "Okay, then," you know. But what they like to do is they like to arrange it so that you go into detox, and the day you leave the detox unit is the same day that you enter rehab, so that it's
Mhm.
all fluid and there's no gaps in between. And the
Yeah.
reason why is because now looking back, when I came out of detox, I felt absolutely fine. I thought to myself, I feel great. I'm not withdrawing anymore because obviously the Librium with alcohol, they use Librium to
Right.
control your withdrawals. And then what they do is they cut down the Librium. So for 2 days, I was on 5 for 2 days, then 4 for 2 days, 3 for 2 days, 2 for 2 days, 1 for 2 days, and then on zero.
Mhm. Mhm.
So by the time I left, I was no longer alcohol dependent. And it was great. I felt great. I actually didn't think I needed to go to rehab anymore because I felt just fine, you know. But now I look back, right, I can see how addiction is so much more than just picking up the substance. It is a
Mm.
mindset because when I went into rehab,
Absolutely.
I didn't want to go there for a start. I was, dreading it. I still didn't want to go there, even though I did go there. I didn't want to go there. And then, are you there?
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
still here. Yeah.
And okay. So when I got in there, I remember it was very much about you're here for rehab, you're here to change your life, you're here to stop drinking, and I was like, yeah, 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 I want to stop drinking. Did I? Hell, no, I didn't. I did not want to stop drinking. I thought to
Yeah.
myself, I cannot imagine a life without alcohol. So I'm going to feed them all this stuff. I'm going to feed them all the lines that they want to hear. But
Yeah.
when I come out of here, I'm going to control drink. Looking back now, I can see how much of even though I was alcohol free in terms of like I hadn't drank for a while. I hadn't drank since I've been in the detox unit. I was not alcohol dependent, but I had such an addict mindset. I was
Mm.
still being manipulative. I was still lying. I was still deceiving myself and thinking that actually I could still live a life with alcohol still in my life.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was only halfway through my time in rehab, because we do a lot of group. Because I went to a trauma informed rehab, which was specific to service users that had PTSD traumas, not
Mhm.
just child abuse, but trauma in terms of domestic violence, rapes, just PTSD like traumas.
Yeah.
Um, and so the more work we did on that, the more I got to sort of, you know, face things that I'd tried so hard to bury. But what you also do in rehab is you open your eyes to the person you've become. You
Yeah.
open your eyes to the person you've become due to your addiction. And this person that I'd become wasn't very nice. I'd become a liar, thief, I'd become a manipulator. I had no value for my children. I had no value for my family. I had no value for myself. You know, I was in the very self destructive, but I wasn't just self destructive. I was destroying everything and everyone around me, you know. And I realized, yeah, it was the first time in my life, first time since actually drinking that I'd actually opened my eyes to this monster. I could only call it. I couldn't even recognize the person I'd become. I couldn't even believe
Mm.
that I was capable of all these things that I never thought I'd be capable of, and all these actions and behaviors that I'd demonstrated, which I don't know, that were never in me, but they obviously were. The addiction brought them out, and so, and then when I learned that actually I was causing trauma to my children now I become the abuser. I was
Mhm.
drinking to numb myself from the trauma inflicted on me, but now I was abusing my children and causing them trauma, right? That was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
It really was. And that stayed with me for a few weeks in rehab. I think just processing it and understanding it and accepting it. And then the minute I accepted all of this, I made the decision that I wasn't going to drink again.
Mm.
And I didn't tell anybody I'd made that decision, actually, because I'd realised now, there was no more deceiving, there was no more manipulating, there was none of this. I'd accepted and realised what I'd become, and I'd realised actually that alcohol really has the ability, whether I like it, whether I don't, it has the ability to turn me into someone I don't want to be anymore. And so the only way to not be that person I don't want to be anymore is to end my relationship with alcohol. And so that's what I chose to do,
Mm.
But choosing to do it in rehab is easy. You're not near alcohol anyway. You're in a sort of safe space, I guess. Everyone's, you've got recovery workers there. You've got the staff, the support 24/7. So you can make all sorts of decisions in rehab. But
Yeah.
the proof of the pudding is when you sustain it when you come out.
Yeah.
And that's where it's almost in rehab. They give you all these tools to put in your toolbox. If this happens, you can use this. If this happens, you can use that. So mine was a CBT based rehab. It's very much how
Right.
smart
Okay.
recovery works,
Mm-hmm.
cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, so yeah, I stayed there
Right.
for I stayed there for 4 months actually. So I was meant to stay there. I was meant to come out after 3 months, but I extended my time there for an extra month. So I
Yeah.
stayed there 4 months in total, and I was in detox for 9 days.
9 days detox and then the rest in rehab. Yeah, in the same unit with
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
people. So you I'm assuming you sort of, yeah, were connected with the people there and the people that you saw. I mean, did you make good bonds and friendships while you were in there with the people similar to you?
Yeah, some of them I did, you know. So yeah, you're in this house and you're with 8 other people. In the Nelson Trust, there was 9 women. So I went to women only, rehab as well, because of the
Right.
nature of the trauma. It was a women only rehab.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there was 9 of us all together, including myself. It was like a cottage in the Cotswolds. I kid you not. You walk past it and you
Oh,
wouldn't even know it's a
wow.
rehab. It
Okay.
was just a cottage in the Cotswolds with there's no locks on the doors, there was no cameras because obviously it's trauma informed rehab, so they can't have
Mm.
locks on the doors and stuff like that because it can
Yeah.
trigger people. There was a river flowing through the front and back garden. Ducks used to come and visit in the garden every single day. You wouldn't even know. Um,
Mm.
but in terms of the people, I'm not going to turn around here and say to you that you're one big happy family because I'd be lying. There were all sorts of characters in the rehab with me, and not everyone's there by choice as well. Some people have been court ordered to be there. Some people are there because of social services that put them in there. So not everyone is there by choice, and you do get characters that you don't get on with, and it's
Yeah, of
difficult
course.
because it's almost like when you're in there, the feelings are so intense. I remember getting to a stage once where there was this lady in there, and her time kept getting extended, not because she was wanted to extend it, but because it was ordered that her time extended in there, and she was she just did not want to be in there. She did not accept that she was had a problem, and that's all fine. That's good. That's down to her. But she literally made it so that it became everybody's problem. The whole house there was like a black cloud over the whole house, and it got to the stage where
Mm.
I didn't want to be there anymore. I remember speaking to one of my friends and in there, and she was like, "Aunee, you can't just leave because of this one person. I know it's intense, and I know it's bringing the whole house down, but you got to remember, you walk in alone, and you got to walk out alone."
Mm.
And those things stuck with me because it's very true with rehab. You walk in rehab alone and you walk out of those doors alone, back to your
Mm.
reality. And none of those people that are in rehab with you come back with you to your reality. So you got to make rehab what you want to make it. But in
Mm.
terms of friendships, I have got a lot of. I made a few good friends from rehab because,
Yeah.
ironically, although at that time when I left, I'd been in there 4 months and I'd known these people for 4 months. They knew more about my life than some of my friends ever did. I'd literally
Yeah.
laid myself bare, talked about my good, my bad, and my ugly. There was nothing to hide from them because they'd heard it all, they'd seen it all. We'd gone through the process of healing together, and admitting to ourselves together and all these other things. It was almost like they could see through me, where
Mm.
no friend in my life has had the ability to do that before.
Mm.
So
I
yeah,
think,
I
yeah.
have made some good friends.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
support is a massive part of recovery and, part of your journey definitely. I think there's such a stigma around drinking. I think when you decide to take a break and stop, having that support around you, someone that's been there, done it, got the t-shirt, and maybe still drinking themselves. But I joined a lot of Facebook communities and made some great friends. Some great friends. So yeah. So after rehab, then you were out in the big wide world. I mean, what happened? I mean, how was your journey? What were the temptations, cravings, triggers, all that sort of thing? You used your CBT, you said you got lots of tools in your toolbox, but actually out there, I mean, when you came back home, what what was it like?
So if I could just like backtrack a little bit. So when I
Mm,
spoke to you about being within the Asian community, it's all about picture perfect, ego, pride, blah blah blah. So
mm,
initially, when I was in, when my problem became quite apparent, my addiction became quite apparent because for a long time, like I said, I was able to still keep up appearances.
mm,
But once I hit alcohol dependency, there was no longer keeping up appearances. I was wetting myself. I wasn't brushing my teeth. I wasn't showering for weeks. Literally, I looked like I'd been dragged through a bush. But I'd make my way to the shop every single day, get a bottle of vodka, pass out in the street, in the field, in front of my house. So the whole
yeah,
neighborhood was seeing what was going on. And at first, for my parents, it was quite embarrassing for them, to be fair. Both of my
yeah,
parents are teachers. They come from an Asian background. They really cared what society thought. And here is their daughter being belligerently drunk everywhere, and the whole street's talking about it. People are talking about it. Obviously, when you're drunk, you're posting madness on social media and all the rest of it. But it did get to a point when I had my first seizure. So when they said to me that my parents had said to me, all this stopping when people seizure, they're alcohol dependent, it's all a load of rubbish. You can stop. So I did try to stop, and literally I seizured sober, and that was the
wow,
first time that they realised that actually our daughter's got a serious problem.
yeah,
And then thereafter, I was in hospital quite a few times. And in one of the consultations, one of the consultants that had seen me numerous times had said to me, Aunee, if you don't stop drinking, you're going to die by the end of 2020. Because
wow,
it wasn't my liver, ironically, it was my heart. My heart couldn't my heart couldn't take it. I had such a high blood pressure, high heart rate, and that was just
mm,
me normal. That I was given like literally like about 12 months, and my family, my parents then dropped the ego and pride. They literally dropped the ego and pride, and they fought
yeah,
to get me help. So they fought to get me this particular recovery worker that I got from Turning Point. They pushed for
yeah,
me, encouraged me to go to rehab. And then upon coming back out of rehab, I came back home to my mum and dad's. Um, I was petrified of coming back. As much as I was petrified of going into rehab, I was petrified of leaving rehab, because all of a sudden I was going back. It wasn't so much coming back, it was coming back as a new person. My family hadn't seen the work I'd done in rehab. The Aunee that they dropped to rehab was a completely different Aunee to the Aunee they were picking up, but they didn't know that.
yeah.
And so for me, I was thinking, how am I going to, how am I going to be? I was coming back to the same room that I'd spent loads of drunken slumbers in this room. Um, but my parents had completely redecorated the room. So
Oh wow, okay,
yeah, and so yeah, as much as I was scared, I kind of thought to myself, I'm not going to let myself down. In rehab, I'd met myself for the first time. It was like, hello, Aunee, I'm Aunee. Hi, Aunee, nice to meet you. I was meeting myself for the first time. I'd
yeah,
identified my strengths, I'd identified my weaknesses. I became so self aware. I knew who I was. I knew what I was about. I'd accepted the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'd learned all these skills about taking accountability, taking responsibility of my recovery. I'd learned how strong-headed I can be, and I learned that I could do this. So I've come back as this new Aunee. And at first, my family were like, "What the hell did they do to you in rehab?" Because they were meeting their daughter for the first time as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
and they'd
yeah,
never seen me in this sort of mental, emotional capacity before. But I've just been so strong since coming back. I mean, in terms of craving, you picked up on. I haven't craved alcohol. That's not to say, and I'm not just saying that for any odd reason. That's the truth. I haven't craved alcohol. That's not to say I never will. I just haven't got to that point yet where I've craved
yeah,
alcohol. My whole family drink, and so I had to learn to adapt to being around alcohol quite quickly.
yeah,
So within the first week of coming out, and this is not something I recommend to people, by the way, but the first week of coming out, a week later, I was going to my sister's baby shower. There was alcohol there. That was the first time I was going to be at an event. There was going to be alcohol. I didn't know how it was going to go, but I just had to trust in myself, and it went fine. There was a few times when I remember, because my whole family drink and everything, I thought to myself, oh my god, what happens if I relapse? What's going to happen? And then I remember speaking to somebody, and they said to me, Aunee, how are you going to relapse? And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, yeah, but what would it take for you to relapse? I was like, yeah, if I drank. But they were like, yeah, so who has to pick up the drink to begin with? I was like, me. They're like, yeah, so if you have to pick up the drink to begin with, if you don't pick up the drink, you're not going to relapse, right? And I was thinking, oh my God, they're so right. Like, what the hell am I worried about? It's all in my hands, right? I'm in control of this whole thing. It's up to me whether I relapse or not. It's up to me whether I allow my mind to go, obviously, because the relapse is mental before it's physical. It's up to me whether I allow my mindset to go down that path that then I exhibit behaviours where I pick up you, right? So I've got control over this. And once that was like opened my eyes to a whole new thing. I mean, believe it or not, I actually didn't know that. So people say to me now, or people say to me before, oh, you can't drink. I said, who said I can't drink?
Yeah.
No one's told me I can't drink. I choose not to.
Choose not
It's a
to.
choice.
Yeah.
I choose not to drink. It's not that I can't drink.
Yeah.
I can happily go and pick up if I wanted to, but I choose not to, And it's
Yeah.
great. I find it quite empowering, to be fair. I'm an alcoholic who doesn't drink. It's great. I and I use that to empower me.
Yeah.
But another thing that I did when I came out of rehab, which has really helped my journey, was I peer mentor for the Seat Recovery Network, which is it's not just for Asian people, but it's set up and founded by Asian people, and it helps people in active addiction who are Asian, and so I peer mentor Asian women within that, and so the founder of the Seat Recovery Network, he was doing an interview, very much like what I'm doing with you, but like you could see each other, and it was going to be aired on the Seat channel. And so he said to me, I'd like to do an interview with you. And so I'd done a podcast with him when I newly came out of rehab. But in that podcast, I wasn't really very honest about, I didn't lie, but I wasn't open, then is probably a better word, about my history, about the sexual abuse. But when he asked me to do this interview, this face-to-face interview, I decided that I was going to be honest. I was going to say what had happened. And obviously, I knew it was going to be aired on TV and stuff, so I knew that a lot of people were going to see it. But you know what? I thought, if I don't do it now, I never will. So I was so brutally honest in that interview, and I spoke about the abuse, and I spoke about the fact that my uncle had done it, and I spoke about the whole journey in terms of my family and the dynamics and the pressures I was put under and all the rest of it. And I remember the day it was aired, within 15 minutes, the house phone was ringing, because I live at home, and there's people ringing up my mum saying, what has Aunee done? Aunnie's in debt, like, dirty laundry, she shouldn't be doing that. She's been very specific. So I didn't name names, but I didn't really need to, because mum only has one sister. Do you know what I mean? So there was like talks about they tried to get the interview pulled down, but obviously they couldn't, because when you're doing an interview for a TV channel, they have their own set of solicitors and lawyers before things are broadcasted, so they're always double checked. But yeah, my mum, I remember my mum, she was really off with me, and she was like, you shouldn't have done that interview. And I said to my mum, you're doing the same thing to me again that you did to me before. You're trying to silence me all over again. But this time, I respect what you're saying, and I respect your feelings, but I'm not going to stop. I won't stop. I will carry on speaking now, speaking my truth. And the more I've done it, so I've done a lot of like TV interviews and things like that. And I'm not saying I've done that because I'm great. I think it's because I'm an Asian woman who speaks. There's not a lot of Asian women who openly speak about sexual abuse and alcohol addiction, or addiction full stop, substance addiction, should I say. But I'm an Asian woman who does openly. There isn't anything you really can't ask me. I'll answer anything you got to ask. And so I guess I've gained myself a little niche there, and so it's given me the opportunity to do a lot of things. Speak at conferences, be in the media. But now it's got to the point where my mum sees me on TV, she'll start crying, and out of joy, it almost me saying to her, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do what you want me to do. Just because you're pressured by people, I'm not taking that on. Just because you feel the need to reach people's expectations, that you don't have to put that on me. I'm not taking it. That's yours. And it's almost, I've helped to change their mindset, and sort of now
Mm.
that they're proud of me. Now they're like, yeah, Annie does this, Annie does that. And also, it's helped people to see and understand where my parents have come from, because me breaking that silence has given me freedom. I've got nothing to hide now. I don't need to
Mm.
hide my past, because I've told everyone myself. It's not come from a third party. It's not come from the kid's dad. It's not come from, it's come from my own mouth. I'm telling you I'm an alcoholic. I'm telling you I was sexually abused. I'm telling you all these things myself. I take accountability. I even talk openly about some of my behaviors. I'm not proud of them, but I can take accountability for them. The fact that I neglected my children, the fact that, I stole stuff, all these things I can admit now. There's no greater power than that. But also, what I've done in the process is I've freed my family. My family don't have to keep things a secret anymore either, because I've aired it. So now they're free to discuss what it was like for them. How did you cope as parents? Stuff they wouldn't have been able to talk about previously, they're able to talk about now. And yeah, it's amazing how just healing. And I think getting to know you as well. How many people most people, even without an addiction problem, most people die not knowing who they are. Getting the
Mm.
opportunity to find out who you are, meet yourself, be so self-aware is such a privilege, you know.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That's just amazing. And like you said, it's the empowerment it gives you. And I think it's yeah, it is. It's like, I mean, I've got a Christian faith and I just think about the sword of truth, and I just think it's just so empowering to share, because people are often scared, and the culture that you've been brought up in, and same with the British side of things, it's like stiff upper lip, just get on with it. But taking responsibility, and you said, that hit you when you were in rehab, is actually for a couple of weeks you were thinking about, it's down to you. And I think the listeners listening who really sort of resonate with your story, and maybe have been drinking, because I was a good decade, very much like you, drinking before I probably became really dependent on it. And I think it's just stopping in your tracks and thinking, okay, where's this going to lead? I mean, you were verbally told, if you do not stop drinking within 12 months, you're not going to be here. But there's a lot of people that don't hear that. And to make that decision, it's very fearful, isn't it, to make that decision? But it's your responsibility. You can't stop for your partner. You can't stop for your kids. You can't stop for your parents. And how long are you going to go on abusing your body and your relationships and your health for this addictive substance? So that empowerment, stepping into it, and you've got to. You were rang up and said, do you want to come in during COVID? You were like, yeah, I'm in there, because you were ready. So I mean, just speaking to the listeners out there, I mean, obviously, physical addiction, you've got to be really careful, and you've got to seek medical assistance, haven't you, before you even think about stopping drinking, because you mentioned seizures. I mean, you can actually die, can't you, from seizures if you stop. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give to someone that is probably teetering on the edge of, I mean, drinking is a massive grey area, isn't it? A huge grey area. And the more we
Yeah.
drink, more regularly we drink, the tolerance goes up. We need more and more, like you, a litre and a half of vodka. So what advice would you give to somebody that thinks they can't give up? What would you say to them?
I would say that, as scary as it is, talk to your GP.
Mm,
Talk to your GP. Or if you don't want to talk to your GP, you can actually refer yourself online to substance misuse services. In
mm-hmm,
Leicester, it's Turning Point. In other areas, it's other places. A lot of people are scared that when they go to these services, they're going to be sent to rehab. Not everybody needs rehab. I know a
mm,
lot of people, like you. I know other people that have stopped without going to rehab. I think it's just the nature of where everything stems from. I know AA helps a lot of people. You can join
mm-hmm,
any AA. I mean, I'm not into AA personally, but I know people that are. Or if an AA can be quite strict, so some people I know do NA and CA, which is a bit more relaxed. Same principle, but a bit more relaxed. And you can join those meetings any time of day, online. I mean, they're worldwide, so with COVID and stuff, it's great because you can access a meeting like now if you wanted to. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Some places have community rehabs. So in Leicester, you've got the Stairway Project, which is not a substance misuse service as such, as more a peer support group. So you can go in there if you're still using but want to achieve recovery, or you can go there if you have achieved recovery. To have like a Monday to Friday sort of timetable where you do not just you do a lot of recovery based stuff, but you also do holistic activities like painting and songwriting and just exercise classes and just all these different things. There's different aspects to recovery as well. You get to meet other people, and so that's great. Yeah, and I just think that I think for a lot of people, we feel that we're not in control of our lives, especially when we're in addiction. We feel like it's
Mm.
happening to us, and that's because the substance keeps us focused on our problems. Our problems make us feel more crap. Then we turn to the drink, the substance,
Yeah,
which then
it's a
keeps us focused on
cycle.
our problems, which then makes us feel
Mm.
as more crap. Do you know what I mean? And it's a cycle. But I think
Mm.
understanding that you have control, you do have control, and you are in control of your life. And I think more than anything, I think it's just understanding that you're a person and you're worthy. Because we feel so
Yeah.
unworthy, when active addiction, we're looked at that we're unworthy, and we feel it, and then and then when we drink or take drugs, we exhibit behaviours that aren't very nice, that make us feel more crap about ourselves. No one's harder on ourselves than we are, you know.
Mm.
But just, I think the bravest thing I ever did in my life was to reach out for help. It
Yeah.
saved my life, Um, well, I say it saved my life. It enabled me to save my own life. I think
Yeah.
it's crazy how no one has the power to save you. Only you have the power to save
Mm.
you, but sometimes you just need a bit of guidance on how to do it. And so
Yeah.
I saved myself through people showing me how to do it,
Yeah.
and recovery looks different for loads of people. For me personally, it was going back into education and proving to myself that actually I had a brain and I was capable of much more than I ever believed that I was. But for other people, it's all different things. I know people that set up businesses. I know people that have gone into recovery and addiction work themselves. I know that other people that have themselves gone back into education. Just making your dreams come true, really.
Yeah. Just broadens your horizons. I mean, you've touched a little bit about education. I mean, do you want to share with the listeners what you're actually doing now? You're in recovery. I mean, what doors has that opened for you?
Yeah, so I decided when I was in rehab that I was going to go back to uni. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I left uni in my third year. So I'd always
Mm.
wanted to go back. And then kind of the idea of going back had like sort of flown out the window. So when I was in rehab, um, they kind of said to me, Annie, you're really quite intelligent. And I was like, I don't know. They're like, yeah, like you should go and finish your degree. And so I decided that I was going to finish my degree. So 8 weeks after coming out of rehab, I went back to uni. I repeated my second year because I was doing a biomedical science degree, and obviously science evolves. So what I'd learned 17 years ago, there was a 17-year gap between
Yeah.
me going back, well, leaving and me going back. So I redid my second year, did my third year, got my degree, and then I'm currently
You
doing my
got a
master's
first in
degree
your
in molecular
degree. We
genetics.
want to mention that,
I did, I got
Aunee.
a first in my degree. Yeah, my first in my
Fantastic.
degree. And I'm currently 3/4 of the way through my master's degree in molecular genetics. So that should be finished in August time. And then I'll enter the big wide world of work. But you know what? The education has taught me. It's not just the education, but what it's taught me is I've been frustrated at times, because I've had no money coming in. I've had student loans and stuff like that, but because of the children and the voluntary work, because I still do a lot of voluntary work with the drug and alcohol, I haven't actually had time to do any part-time work. So
Mm.
I've solely been focused on my studies, and the only income I've had is a student loan. So it's been really frustrating. But what I've learned is how important it is to build a foundation. I'm not just talking academically, I'm talking in
Yeah.
general. How
Yeah.
important spending time building a foundation is. So for me, academically, I've spent 3 years studying so hard with very little money, building a foundation. But come September, I'll be able to enter a job that leads me into a career and a good paying job.
Yeah.
That's the payoff for the 3 years
Yeah.
I've spent building this foundation. But it's the same analogy applies for all aspects of your life. Even in recovery, building a strong foundation. And
Yeah.
it's hard work, as you must know yourself.
Yeah.
And at times it's draining. And but you know what? Building the foundation is essential, because once you've built that strong foundation, you're able to. I'm not going to say that you're going to the recovery is going to be successful. Of course, we are addicts after all, so we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be constantly working on ourselves. But a good foundation, a strong foundation, puts you in a much better stead than someone who hasn't spent time
Mm.
working on their foundation. And by foundation, I mean working on yourself, working on your issues, pinpointing your problems, healing your wounds, getting counselling. Identifying the areas where you want to be better, do work to make yourself better, be better in all aspects of your life. And for me, yeah, it's really proven to me that building a foundation is so important. It's more important than I gave it credit for previously. Does that make
Yeah.
sense to you, what I'm saying?
Absolutely, completely and utterly. I mean, I have people that call me and we have discussions about they want to make changes around their drinking, but they've probably been drinking for a decade, 2 decades, sometimes 3, 4 decades, but they're not willing to put in the work to work on their mindset. They just want like a quick fix. And it's like,
The
well, I'm sorry, but I don't
overnight.
work with people. And that is just not how it is. If you want to work with me, you've really got to put 100% in, because if you don't put 100% in, then you're not going to reap those rewards. You're just going to you'll just, be back to drinking within a few months. Yeah, it's great. Like you were your 6 weeks, you did your 6 weeks and then you were back out there. But the thing is,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
so true. A mindset is a lot. I mean, you and myself are very similar with this. You're doing a lot around your mindset, because your thoughts are just your thoughts. They're not reality. Your thoughts, you can tell yourself anything and believe it. And we've got to change that cycle. Like you said, it's a rinse and repeat cycle when you're drinking. And it's reaching out for that support and halting that thought pattern. And all around, I mean, what you're doing at uni is all about neuroplasticity and all about changing those neural pathways in our brains. And it's scientific. It's just all been researched, hasn't it? You've just got to think differently. And one of my things is, you change your thinking, you change your drinking. And it is so true. So true. So yeah,
Oh,
100%,
100%. And I
100%,
also
Aunee.
agree with you. Like for me, people are like, you're very strong headed. You're very, I said, well, I am strong headed, but my strong headedness is what led me so far down the path of addiction. Because if I'm this
Mm.
strong headed in recovery, can you imagine what I was doing to myself when I was thinking the opposite way? But
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? But also, I say to people, I'm not positive all the time. I
Mm.
do have erratic thought patterns at times. I'm only human. I'm not superhuman. I'm
Yeah.
coming to the recovery
Yeah.
smiles every single day. I have crap
Mm.
days, and I have
Mm.
days where my mind can go down negative path trails,
Mm.
and I have erratic thinking. But I have the ability to recognize that as well. So what I will do
Exactly.
is, when I'm having all these thoughts that are all jumbling, and I know they're erratic, and I want to
Mm.
do this and I want to do that, but I know it doesn't make sense and it's not responsible, I will reach out to someone and saying, "This is how I feel." And they will help me to unravel my
Yeah.
thought process, or they will help me to see it from a different perspective. I stop the thoughts while they're thoughts so they don't turn into behaviors, which is
Yeah.
literally what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
we're not supposed to be happy people all the time. We all get up, but we rely on our feelings and emotions all the time. But it's easy for me to say now, but we shouldn't, because as soon as a thought comes in, we entertain that thought, it turns into something negative, and then it actually acts out in our behavior. But like you said, if
Yeah.
you are aware and recognize it, and it's all about awareness, and it's all about unpicking why we do what we do and why we drink. And you are, done a fantastic job of putting yourself out there and just dealing with and taking responsibility with what happened, because we can often fall into being a victim. I mean, I know lots of people around me that wear this victim's coat, and it's all their fault and it's not my fault. And it's like, you've got to step back. Yeah, some of it might be their fault, but it's really how we see it and our perspective. I've just done something called emotional change therapy, which is like NLP, but it's not logic based, it's heart centered based. And it's very much about how we perceive the world, and we perceive the world through our experiences. And, sometimes they've not been nice experiences like you've been chatting about today. And we've got to sort of backtrack really and look at our part that we played in that, and really detach ourselves sometimes from experiences that have happened, and just unpick it. And you mentioned counselling and therapy and support and speaking to someone. And I think it's really, really important to seek some sort of support. I mean, I'm a coach, so I'm forward thinking. I'm not a counsellor. I look at goals and what you want to achieve moving forward. But there's a lot of fantastic therapists, psychotherapists out there that have, similar experiences with you, where you need a professional to help get to the bottom of it, and then just rebuilding, like you said, building those
Well,
foundations. We
100%.
never stop learning, do we? It's a
We
lifelong,
don't.
we're always learning, and we're always going to have hurdles to get over. It's just part of life. It's just how it is.
100%. And I think the therapy and stuff, it got me to the point of accepting what had happened. I was able to heal myself from what had happened. And then I got to a stage
Mm.
where I realized that no matter what I do, I'm always still going to have had sexual abuse in my background.
Mm.
That experience is not going to go away. And
Mm.
I've been through domestic violence, and that's not going to go away. So what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do with this experience that I've had? Am I going to be in a poor me, pity me, where I victimize myself, and then I kind
Mm.
of drown myself in these sorrows, or am I going to use it to empower me and help other people? It's an experience, so I have a
Yeah.
choice what I do, because I can't change the
Yeah.
experience. And so I chose to help other people through my own experiences, which I found very empowering. Talking to other people as well, it opens your mind up to new thoughts and new perspectives that even you didn't have yourself.
Mm.
It's great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's fantastic. So where can people reach you? Because you said you're volunteering at the minute, but I know you mentioned something about a documentary, and you've got a web. You're on Instagram. So I mean, if people have really resonated with you and want to make contact, whereabouts do they find you, Aunee?
Yeah, so literally, you could just. I'm on Facebook, and I use my Facebook platform very much. It's a very recovery based platform. I'm very open on there. I think more than Instagram. You can reach me on Instagram, and in Instagram, the bio to the link to my documentary that was on TV is on there. But on
Hmm.
Facebook, if you want to sort of follow my journey, I talk a lot about my journey, and not just in terms of what it was like when I was in addiction. Believe it or not, recovery comes with its own problems, and and the overthinking doesn't go away. I
Mm.
have some of my service users when they come to my prehab groups, and one of the questions is why rehab? What is it you want to gain from rehab? And they're like, I just want to stop overthinking, and I just want to be able to sleep properly. I'm just like, nah, forget it. Get that illusion out your head, because recovery doesn't mean you stop overthinking, and it doesn't mean
Mm.
that you start sleeping great. I still am sleeping great, and I'm 3 years in
Mm.
recovery. So you know,
Yeah.
don't have that false perception of recovery. But recovery, yeah, it does have its own different challenges, and I talk very openly about those. If you type my name into Google, you'll see a lot of the newspaper articles and the TV, like sort of the news things that I've done as well. So literally,
Mm.
it's just typing my name in. You can follow me on Facebook,
Brilliant.
Instagram, contact me that way. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, I'll put those in the show notes too, so people can look you up. I really appreciate your time. A fascinating
Thank you, Daryl.
journey that you've had, and I wish you all the best, because I know you're on par for a distinction in your masters. We were chatting earlier. I mean, you're just like an inspiration. Absolutely phenomenal, Aunee, what you've achieved.
Yeah.
And if there's any of the Asian community out there that can really relate to Aunee, then please get in touch, because you speak to Aunee, it's completely confidential. Just have a chat with her, and then if you want to make changes in your life, then that's just taking that small step just to reach out is important. So thank you so much, Aunee, and enjoy the rest of your
Thank you,
day. Thank
Daryl.
you.
Thank you.
So I love answering people's questions. So if there's any questions from this episode that you would like to send me, then please reach out via my website. I'll be happy to answer them on another episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, then I would love it if you would leave a review for me. And you can find all the links in the show notes. And remember, if you want to control your drinking, you need to control your thinking, because nothing changes if nothing changes. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the episode, please hit the subscribe button and leave a review. If you've been left with a question from today's episode, then please drop me a line. I love to answer listeners' questions as it adds to the flavour of the show. And of course, it's completely anonymous. All links are in the show notes, and I'm looking forward to sharing again next week and helping you to find your path to freedom. It really does take courage to take that first step. But remember, nothing changes if nothing changes.